My name is Dorothy Matthews, and I'm 67 years old. 3 weeks ago, I received a phone call that shattered my world more completely than losing my husband to cancer ever did. It was from my son Michael, my only child, the boy I raised alone for 22 years, the center of my universe. "Mom," he said, his voice cold and distant, "I need you to stop calling me, stop texting, stop sending cards. Veronica and we need space from you. Permanently." I stood in my small kitchen in Akron, Ohio, holding the phone with trembling hands, staring at the birthday cake I'd just finished decorating for him. 22 candles, chocolate with vanilla frosting, his favorite since he was 5 years old. "Michael, honey, what are you talking about? It's your birthday tomorrow. I made your cake. I'm not coming tomorrow, Mom. I'm not coming ever again. Please don't make this harder than it has to be." The line went dead. My son, my miracle baby, my pride and joy, my reason for living had just erased me from his life like I never existed. Let me tell you about Michael's birth, because you need to understand what he meant to me. I was 45 years old when I got pregnant, after 15 years of trying and failing. After my husband Richard and I had given up hope of ever having children, the doctors called it a miracle pregnancy. I called it God finally answering my prayers. Richard died when Michael was 3, a sudden heart attack that left me a widow with a toddler, and no idea how I was going to survive. But I had Michael, and that was enough. He was my whole world, my second chance at happiness, my legacy. I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat, days at the insurance office, evenings cleaning offices, weekends babysitting other people's children while raising my own. I never complained, never resented the sacrifice. Every tired morning, every aching night, every missed opportunity was worth it to see my son smile. Michael was brilliant, straight A's from kindergarten through high school, captain of the debate team, valedictorian of his graduating class. When he got a full scholarship to University of Miami, I cried for 3 days straight. Joy and terror mixed together in equal measure. "You're going to do amazing things," I told him as we packed his bags. "Just remember where you came from. And remember that your mama loves you more than life itself." He hugged me so tightly that day. I'll never forget. Mom, never. Veronica Castellanos entered our lives during Michael's junior year. She was everything I wasn't. Young, beautiful, wealthy, connected to Miami's elite social circle. Her father owned real estate developments across South Florida, and her mother was some kind of socialite who appeared in magazine photos at charity galas. When Michael first brought her home for Christmas break, I tried so hard to make her feel welcome. I cooked for 3 days straight, made up the guest room with my best sheets, even bought new towels for the bathroom. But from the moment Veronica walked into my modest house, I could see the disdain in her eyes. She looked around my living room, the furniture I'd saved years to buy, the family photos covering every surface, the Christmas tree I'd decorated with ornaments Michael had made in elementary school, like she was touring a museum of poverty. "It's so quaint," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Very authentic small-town America." Michael laughed nervously. "Mom's kept everything exactly the same since I was little. It's like a time capsule." I watched him see his childhood home through her eyes, and for the first time, I saw him look ashamed of where he came from. That's when I knew I was losing him. Over the next year, Veronica worked like a slow poison in my son's system. She never said anything directly critical about me. She was too clever for that. Instead, she planted seeds of doubt, little comments that grew into big problems. "Your mom calls you every day," she'd say to Michael while I was listening on speakerphone. "That's so sweet. My mom only calls when there's an emergency. She says healthy adults need independence." Or, "Your mom still does your laundry when you visit. That's unusual for someone your age." Or, "It must be hard for your mom, having her whole life revolve around you. Doesn't she have any friends her own age?" Each comment was delivered with a smile, with false concern. But the message was clear: your mother is pathetic, clingy, holding you back from becoming the man you're supposed to be. And Michael started believing her. They got engaged on New Year's Eve of Michael's senior year. He called to tell me the news, and I could hear Veronica coaching him in the background. "Mom, I wanted you to be the first to know. Veronica and I are getting married." I was quiet for a moment, processing. My baby boy, engaged to a girl who clearly despised me. "Congratulations, sweetheart." When? This summer. July 15th. In Miami, Veronica's parents are planning everything. "Do you need me to help with anything?" I could. "No, Mom. The Castellanos have it all handled. It's going to be very upscale. Very different from what you're used to." There it was. The first time my son had ever made me feel like I wasn't good enough for his life. "I see," I said quietly. "Well, I'll need to buy a dress. Something appropriate." Veronica's voice was clear in the background. "Make sure she knows it's black tie. We don't want any misunderstandings." The wedding was everything I'd expected and dreaded. 200 guests at an oceanfront resort, flowers that cost more than my monthly salary, champagne that was older than Michael. I wore a navy dress I'd bought at Macy's with money I'd been saving for a new water heater, and I felt like a fraud from the moment I walked in. Veronica's mother, Catalina, greeted me with air kisses and a smile that could have frozen the Atlantic. "Dorothy, so wonderful to finally meet Michael's mother." The pause before mother was deliberate, calculated to make me feel like an intruder at my own son's wedding. I sat alone during the ceremony, watching my baby boy promise to love and honor a woman who'd already convinced him that loving me was a weakness. The mother-son dance was the worst part. Michael held me stiffly, looking over my shoulder at Veronica the entire time. "I'm so proud of you," I whispered, as we danced to What a Wonderful World, the song we'd danced to in our kitchen when he was little. "Thanks, Mom," he said, but his voice was distant, distracted. He was already gone. After the wedding, Michael's calls became less frequent. Once a week became once every 2 weeks, then once a month. Our conversations got shorter, more polite, less intimate. "How's work?" I'd ask. "Fine, good, busy. How's Veronica?" "She's great, really great. We're both really busy with things." "What kind of things?" "Just, life, adult stuff. Adult stuff." Like I'd never been an adult, never navigated the complexities of marriage and parenthood and loss. When I sent care packages, his favorite cookies, newspaper clippings about local events he might find interesting, photos from his childhood, they were never acknowledged. When I called on his birthday, Veronica would answer and tell me he was indisposed or at an important meeting. I started to feel like I was chasing a ghost, trying to maintain a relationship with someone who no longer existed. Last Christmas, I flew to Miami to visit them. It was the first time I'd seen Michael in 8 months, and I was shocked by how much he'd changed. He was thinner, more serious, wearing expensive clothes that made him look like a stranger. Their apartment was a showcase, all white furniture and abstract art, nothing that spoke of warmth or history or family. There were no photos of us together, no mementos from his childhood, nothing that indicated he'd ever had a life before Veronica. "Mom, we need to talk," he said on my second day there. Veronica was at the spa, so it was just the two of us for the first time in years. "Of course, honey. What's on your mind?" He looked uncomfortable, like he was reciting words someone else had taught him. "I've been thinking a lot about my childhood, about patterns, unhealthy patterns, codependent patterns. Veronica's been helping me understand some things about our relationship." My heart started pounding. "What kind of things?" "The way you controlled me. The guilt trips. The way you made me feel responsible for your happiness." I stared at my son, this stranger wearing my baby's face, and felt my world tilt sideways. "Michael, I don't understand. I never—" "You did, Mom. You just don't remember it that way." "But I remember. The crying when I wanted to spend time with friends. The way you'd get sick whenever I tried to be independent. The constant phone calls, the checking up on me. Each word was a knife in my chest. Honey, I was worried about you because I loved you. Because it was just the two of us, and I wanted to make sure you were okay. That's not love, Mom. That's possession." Veronica helped me see that. The worst was yet to come. On my last day in Miami, as I was packing to leave, Michael sat me down for what he called a conversation about boundaries. "Mom, I need you to know that I remember things differently than you do. About my childhood. About ... how you treated me." "What do you mean?" He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "I remember being afraid of you sometimes, the way you'd lose your temper when I didn't do what you wanted. The punishment. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Michael, I never laid a hand on you. Not once. Not ever. Physical abuse isn't the only kind of abuse. Mom, I never abused you. I loved you. I gave you everything I had." Veronica says that's what all abusive parents say. They convince themselves that control is love. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised with nothing but devotion and sacrifice, and realized he was lost to me. Somewhere along the way, Veronica had rewritten our history, painting my love as pathology, my sacrifices as selfishness. "Michael," I whispered, "you were my whole world. Everything I did was for you." "That's the problem, Mom. I was never supposed to be your whole world. That's not fair to put on a child." A month after I returned to Ohio, Michael called to tell me he'd been seeing a therapist. "She's helping me process my childhood trauma," he said. "What trauma, Michael? What trauma are you talking about?" "The emotional abuse, the codependency, the way you made me responsible for your mental health." I was crying by then, ugly sobs that made it hard to speak. I worked 3 jobs to support us. I never dated, never remarried, because I wanted to focus on raising you right. How is that abuse? That's exactly what I'm talking about, Mom. You sacrificed your own life and then made me feel guilty about it. That's emotional manipulation. It wasn't manipulation. I didn't want anyone else. You were enough. You were more than enough. No child should be enough for their parents' entire life. That's not healthy. That's not normal. Normal. After his father died, nothing about our life was normal. But we'd made it work. We'd been happy. Hadn't we been happy? 3 months ago, I learned the truth about why Michael had really cut me out of his life. My neighbor's daughter, who lives in Miami, called me after running into Michael and Veronica at a restaurant. "Mrs. Matthews," she said gently, "I don't know if I should tell you this, but I overheard something ... She'd been seated at the table next to them, and Veronica was talking about me to her friends, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Michael's mother is so embarrassing," Veronica had said. "She lives in this tiny house in Ohio, and works at an insurance office. Can you imagine, when we have children, I don't want them exposed to that kind of poverty mindset." One of her friends had asked if Michael was okay with cutting his mother off. "He is now," Veronica had laughed. "It took some work, but I convinced him she was toxic. Made him see that her love was actually manipulation. Men are so easy to reprogram when you know which buttons to push." My son had said nothing to defend me. Nothing to correct her. He'd just sat there, nodding along as his wife mocked the woman who'd raised him. Last month, I found out about the trust fund. Michael's father had a small life insurance policy when he died, but Richard's parents, wealthy people who'd never approved of our marriage, had set up a trust for Michael that he'd inherit when he turned 25. Michael had never mentioned it to me. For 22 years, I'd struggled to pay for his clothes, his school supplies, his college applications, his everything. I'd worked myself to exhaustion, sacrificed my health and my own dreams, never knowing that money was waiting for him all along. When I called him to ask about it, his voice was cold. "It's not your business, Mom. My finances are between me and my wife now." "But Michael, if you'd told me about the trust, I could have had a life. I could have dated, maybe remarried. I could have." "What, Mom? You could have what? Used me less, needed me less, made me less responsible for your happiness." That's when I understood. Veronica hadn't just convinced him that I was toxic. She'd convinced him that loving me was holding him back from the life he deserved. A life with money, status, connections, a beautiful wife who could open doors for him that I never could. The call 3 weeks ago was the end of everything. Michael's voice was steady, rehearsed, final. Mom, I've decided that I need to go no contact with you. My therapist thinks it's the healthiest thing for my recovery. Recovery from what, Michael? What am I supposed to have done to you? You made me your emotional husband after Dad died. You put adult responsibilities on a child. You taught me that love meant sacrifice and suffering and guilt. I have to unlearn all of that now. I loved you the best way I knew how. I know you think you did, but impact matters more than intention. And the impact of your parenting was damaging. I was sobbing by then, barely able to speak. Please don't do this. Please don't throw away everything we had. I'm your mother. I'm the only mother you'll ever have. That's exactly the kind of guilt trip I'm talking about. This is why I need space. This is why I can't have you in my life anymore. What about when you have children? Don't you want them to know their grandmother? There was a long pause. If Veronica and I have children, they'll have her parents. They'll have the kind of grandparents who can contribute something positive to their lives. The line went dead. My son, my miracle baby, my life's work, my heart walking around outside my body, had just told me I wasn't worthy to know his future children. For 3 weeks, I've been living in a kind of suspended animation. I wake up every morning forgetting, for just a moment, that my son is gone. Then reality crashes over me like a wave. And I remember that the person I loved most in this world has decided I'm not worth loving. I've replayed every conversation, every decision, every moment of his childhood, looking for the signs I missed. When did my love become toxic? When did my sacrifices become manipulation? When did raising my son alone become child abuse? I think about Veronica, sitting in their beautiful apartment, congratulating herself on successfully separating a mother from her child. I think about Michael, convinced that the woman who gave him everything was actually stealing from him all along. I've started seeing a therapist myself, trying to understand what happened. Dr. Sarah Klein is kind but direct. Dorothy, she said during our last session, you didn't abuse your son. You loved him imperfectly, like all parents do. But Michael has chosen to rewrite your history together, because it's easier than admitting he's ashamed of where he came from. But what if he's right? What if I did damage him? Did you hit him? Never. Did you neglect his basic needs? I gave him everything. Did you tell him he was worthless or stupid? I told him he was brilliant. Every day. Then you didn't abuse him, Dorothy. You raised him alone after losing your husband, and you did the best you could with what you had. If he can't see that now, it's his loss, not yours. The hardest part is thinking about the future. Michael is 22 now. Someday, probably soon, he and Veronica will have children. I'll be a grandmother, but I'll never know my grandchildren. They'll grow up thinking their father was an orphan, or that his mother was too terrible to mention. I imagine them asking questions. Daddy, where is your mommy? Why don't we have a grandma on your side? What will Michael tell them? Will he say, I died? Will he tell them I was abusive? Will he simply pretend I never existed? I've written letters to my future grandchildren, dozens of them, telling them about their father's childhood, about how much I loved him, about the life we built together after their grandfather died. I keep them in a box in my closet, along with all of Michael's school photos and report cards and artwork. Maybe someday, when they're adults, they'll find these letters and understand that they had a grandmother who loved them before they were even born. I've found an online support group for mothers who've been cut off by their adult children. There are hundreds of us, women who gave everything to raise our kids, only to be discarded when we were no longer useful. Patricia's daughter decided she was too emotionally needy, and cut contact after getting married to a wealthy man who thought Patricia was beneath them. Linda's son was convinced by his girlfriend that Linda was narcissistic because she called him twice a week. Jennifer's daughter moved across the country and changed her phone number because her new husband didn't want family drama in their lives. We share our stories, our grief, our confusion. We try to support each other through the impossible task of grieving someone who's still alive but lost to us forever. The worst part, Patricia wrote last week, is that everyone expects us to respect their boundaries and let them go with love. But how do you let go of your child? How do you stop being a mother just because your child decides they don't want you anymore? Everyone has opinions about what I did wrong. My sister thinks I was too involved in Michael's life and should have pushed him to be more independent. My neighbor thinks I was too lenient and should have been stricter. My former coworker thinks I was too protective and should have let him fail more often. The therapist Veronica found from Michael apparently thinks I was emotionally incestuous, a term that makes me physically ill. According to his interpretation, my close relationship with my son after his father died was inappropriate, unhealthy, damaging. But here's what I know. I was a single mother doing the best I could with limited resources and no help. I worked multiple jobs to keep us housed and fed. I attended every school event, helped with every project, cheered at every achievement. I taught him to be kind, honest, hardworking, and respectful. If that's abuse, then I don't understand what love is supposed to look like. I torture myself with what ifs. What if I'd remarried when Michael was young? Would he have had a male role model who could have taught him to value family loyalty? What if I'd been stricter about his phone calls home when he went to college? What if I'd seen through Veronica's manipulation from the beginning and warned him? What if I'd been richer? What if I'd been more sophisticated? What if I'd been the kind of mother-in-law Veronica could have been proud of instead of ashamed of? But then I remember, I did everything right that I knew how to do. I loved my son completely, supported his dreams unconditionally, and sacrificed my own happiness for his well-being. If that's not enough, if that makes me the villain in his story, then I don't know what else I could have done. I'm learning to accept that Michael is gone. Not dead, but gone in every way that matters. The little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who called me his best girl, who promised he'd take care of me when I got old. That boy doesn't exist anymore. In his place is a man who's convinced that loving me was a mistake, that knowing me is an embarrassment, that having me in his life would somehow diminish him. I'm learning to grieve the relationship we had and the future we'll never share. I'm learning to build a life that doesn't revolve around being his mother, even though that's the only identity I've known for 22 years. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Last week, I wrote Michael one final letter. Not to send, I know he won't read it, but to say everything I need to say. My dearest Michael, I don't know what I did to deserve being erased from your life, but I accept that this is your choice. I want you to know that I'm proud of the man you've become, even if that man doesn't want to know me anymore. I'm sorry if loving you too much felt like a burden. I'm sorry if my sacrifices felt like guilt trips. I'm sorry if my pride in you felt like pressure. I never meant to hurt you. I only ever wanted to give you the best life I could. If you ever change your mind, if you ever want to remember the good times we had, my door will always be open. I'll always be your mother, even if you're no longer my son. I love you more than words can say. I always have, and I always will, Mom. Today is Michael's 23rd birthday. I won't call him. He's made it clear that my love is unwelcome. Instead, I'll light a candle for the little boy he used to be, the one who loved me as much as I loved him. I'm 67 years old, and I'm learning to live without the person who was my reason for living. Some days are harder than others. Some days I can't stop crying. Some days I'm angry at the unfairness of it all. But I'm still here. I'm still his mother, even if he's no longer my son. And maybe someday, when Veronica's poison has worn off, when he's older and wiser and has children of his own, he'll remember what we had. Maybe he'll remember the mother who worked 3 jobs to give him everything, who cheered at every baseball game, who stayed up all night when he was sick, who believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. Maybe he'll realize that what he calls toxic was actually just love, imperfect, overwhelming, all-consuming love from a woman who'd lost everything except him. Or maybe he won't. Maybe this is the end of our story, and I'll spend the rest of my life as the mother of a stranger who shares my DNA but nothing else. Either way, I can't regret loving him. I can't regret the 22 years when he was mine, when being his mother was the most important thing I'd ever done. The love remains, even when the person you love decides that love is worthless. And that will have to be enough.